Braveheart didn't just tell Scotland's story, it rewrote it, turned history into legend, and made audiences believe one man could change everything. But behind the battle cries and blue war paint, nothing was accurate. The timeline was wrong, the costumes were invented, and Mel Gibson, he fought the studio every single day to keep control. These are 20 secrets about Braveheart hidden for decades. And buried in the bloodshed, a romantic subplot with a princess who was actually 9 years old in real life. Raise your sword. This gets more brutal than you think. Number 20. The battle scenes used real retired Irish soldiers. The massive battle sequences in Braveheart required hundreds of extras who could move like actual armies, follow complex choreography, and make medieval warfare look authentic. Mel Gibson didn't want random extras shuffling around pretending to fight. He wanted real soldiers who understood formations, discipline, and combat dynamics. So the production recruited over 1,600 Irish Army Reserve soldiers who'd recently retired or were on leave. These weren't actors playing soldiers. They were actual military personnel who understood how to move as units, how to hold formation under pressure, how to charge and retreat with precision. The Irish government approved the arrangement, seeing it as positive publicity and additional income for veterans. The soldiers were paid standard extra rates plus bonuses for stunt work, which many performed enthusiastically. They brought military discipline to the set that transformed the battle scenes. When Gibson called for a cavalry charge, these men responded with genuine military coordination. When he needed shield walls to hold formation, they locked together with practiced efficiency. The authenticity shows on screen. The battles in Braveheart feel chaotic yet organized, brutal yet tactical, because the men fighting actually understood warfare. Modern CGI can create vast digital armies, but they lack the weight and presence of real humans moving together. Those Irish soldiers gave Braveheart's battles visceral reality, proving that sometimes the best special effect is simply hiring people who genuinely know what they're doing. Number 19. Mel Gibson refused studio interference and self-financed parts of the film Paramount. Pictures greenlit Braveheart, but wanted significant creative control. They pushed for a bigger name actress as the female lead, wanted to cut 30 minutes from the runtime, demanded the battles be less graphic, and insisted on test screenings with power to mandate changes. Mel Gibson, who was directing his second feature film, refused every demand. He'd spent years developing the project, studying Scottish history, crafting his vision. He wasn't about to let studio executives reshape it. The standoff became intense, with Paramount threatening to pull funding if Gibson didn't compromise. His response was simple. He'd finance the film himself if necessary, and he did. When the budget exceeded Paramount's approved $70 million, Gibson personally invested millions of his own money to complete the film exactly as he envisioned. He paid for extended battle sequences the studio deemed unnecessary. He funded additional shooting days to capture performances he felt weren't quite right. He even covered cost overruns from weather delays and location issues. This financial commitment gave him leverage. The studio couldn't control someone who wasn't entirely dependent on their money. Gibson maintained the final cut, kept his 3-hour runtime, and refused test screening changes. Paramount executives were furious but powerless. When Braveheart became both a critical and commercial success, winning 5 Academy Awards including Best Picture and Best Director, Gibson's gamble was vindicated. He'd proven that sometimes trusting your vision matters more than studio approval. Number 18. The blue war paint was historically wrong by 1,000 years. One of Braveheart's most iconic images is William Wallace and his warriors charging into battle with faces painted blue. It's become synonymous with the film, instantly recognizable, endlessly parodied, but it's historically absurd. The ancient Picts, Celtic tribes who lived in Scotland, did use blue woad paint in battle, but that was around 1,000 years before William Wallace's time. By the 13th century, when Wallace actually lived, Scottish warriors absolutely did not paint themselves blue. They wore armor, chainmail, padded garments, not ritualistic war paint. Mel Gibson knew this. Historians consulted on the film repeatedly told him the blue paint was anachronistic and inaccurate. Gibson didn't care. He wanted a visual that would make the Scottish warriors look primal, fierce, distinct from the heavily armored English. He wanted something that would translate cinematically, that would make audiences feel the Scots' wild energy and rejection of civilization's rules. So he deliberately used the wrong historical period's practice because it served his story. The decision drove historians insane. Academic papers were written about Braveheart's historical inaccuracies, with the blue paint cited as Exhibit A. But general audiences loved it. The image became iconic, precisely because it was visually striking, even if completely wrong. Gibson later admitted he prioritized emotional truth over historical accuracy, wanting viewers to feel the spirit of Scottish rebellion, even if the specific details were invented. Sometimes the legend is more powerful than the fact. Number 17. Sophie Marceau's Princess Isabella never met William Wallace.
Because of the way you are looking at me now.
The romantic subplot between William Wallace and Princess Isabella of France is central to Braveheart's emotional arc. Their forbidden love, the intimate scenes, Wallace's final vision of her before death. It drives the narrative, but it's complete fiction. The real Princess Isabella was approximately 9 years old when William Wallace died. She was a child living in France, never been to England or Scotland, certainly never met Wallace. She didn't marry England's King Edward II until years after Wallace's execution. Mel Gibson and screenwriter Randall Wallace knew this. He invented the romance entirely because the film needed an emotional counterpoint to the violence, love story to balance the warfare. They aged Isabella up, brought her to England early, and created meetings that never happened. Historians were appalled, calling it not just inaccurate but offensive, turning a child into a romantic interest through creative timeline manipulation. Filmmakers defended the choice, arguing Braveheart was never meant to be a documentary. Making a movie about the spirit of freedom, using William Wallace as a symbol. The Isabella romance served the emotional narrative, providing intimacy, stakes, and a through line beyond battles. Sophie Marceau brought grace and strength to the role, making the fictional relationship believable even if impossible. Modern viewers watching Braveheart as history are misled. Viewers watching it as myth, legend dramatized for emotional impact, can appreciate the storytelling even while recognizing it's built on fabrication. Verse 16. The famous freedom line was never historically recorded. Wallace's final word before execution, that defiant scream of freedom, come one of cinema's most quoted moments. It's powerful, cathartic, perfectly encapsulating the film's themes, but there's absolutely no historical evidence that Wallace said it. Contemporary accounts of his execution exist, written by witnesses who described the brutal torture and death. None mention him screaming anything. The execution was designed to prevent speech, the torture so severe that crying out in pain would be the only possible sound. Most historians believe Wallace was likely incoherent or silent during his final moments, the physical trauma too overwhelming for dramatic final words. Randall Wallace, the screenwriter, invented the line because the scene demanded it. Dramatically, Wallace needed a final statement, something that would resonate and justify everything the audience had watched. Freedom was perfect, simple, and powerful, embodying his entire struggle in one word. Mel Gibson initially worried it was too theatrical, too Hollywood. He filmed multiple takes with variations, including some where Wallace said nothing, dying silently. But in editing, the freedom scream was undeniably the most effective. It gave the audience catharsis, turned brutal execution into triumph. The line became so famous, it overshadowed historical reality. Many people believe Wallace actually said it, that it's a documented fact rather than screenwriter invention. The power of cinema to create truth, to make fiction feel more real than reality, perfectly demonstrated in one fabricated word. Number 15. Mel Gibson was injured multiple times during filming. Directing and starring in an epic battle film meant Mel Gibson was constantly at risk. He wasn't just calling shots from behind a monitor. He was in the middle of choreographed chaos, riding horses at full speed, swinging weapons, and performing stunts that should have been left to professionals. The injuries accumulated quickly. During the Battle of Stirling sequence, Gibson was thrown from his horse when it stumbled on uneven ground. He landed hard, bruising ribs and temporarily knocking the wind out of him. The crew wanted to stop filming. Gibson refused, remounting and finishing the scene. During a sword fight sequence, a weapon struck his hand despite safety choreography, splitting skin and requiring stitches between takes. He wrapped the injury and continued working, blood occasionally seeping through bandages and shots that had to be digitally cleaned in post-production. The most serious injury happened during the final battle sequence when a stunt went wrong and Gibson took a fall that should have been controlled, but wasn't. He injured his shoulder, an injury that required physical therapy and caused chronic pain for months afterward. Between directing responsibilities and performance demands, Gibson was exhausted and increasingly battered. Cast members later said he was running on adrenaline and stubbornness, refusing to acknowledge physical limitations. That intensity shows on screen. Wallace's weariness in later scenes is partly genuine exhaustion from a director's star, pushing himself beyond reasonable limits, making the performance authentic through actual suffering. Number 14. The entire film was shot in Ireland, not Scotland. Despite being Scotland's national epic, celebrating Scottish history and independence, Braveheart wasn't filmed in Scotland. Not a single frame. The entire production took place in Ireland, primarily because of financial incentives. The Irish government offered significant tax breaks for film productions, reducing costs substantially. Scotland offered nothing comparable, making Ireland the economically logical choice. The production found locations in Ireland that could double for medieval Scotland. The Curragh Plains for battle scenes, Trim Castle as a stand-in for York, the Wicklow Mountains for Highland sequences. With careful cinematography and production design, audiences never noticed the geographic substitution. But Scottish nationalists were furious when they discovered their national hero's story was filmed entirely in another country. Cultural organizations protested, politicians complained, and there were calls to boycott the film. The irony was palpable. A movie about Scottish independence, funded by an American studio, directed by an Australian American, filmed entirely in Ireland. Mel Gibson defended the decision as purely practical, pointing out that filmmaking is a business requiring fiscal responsibility. The Scottish locations they had scouted were beautiful, but logistically difficult and expensive. Ireland provided everything they needed at a fraction of the cost. The controversy faded once the film was released and became a point of Scottish pride anyway. Audiences embraced Braveheart regardless of where it was filmed, proving that emotional authenticity can overcome geographic accuracy. The spirit of Scotland was there, even if the actual dirt was Irish. Number 13. Patrick McGoohan delivered his cruelest lines without rehearsal.
Are the key to the door of Scotland. Grant our nobles lands in the north, give their nobles estates here in England, and make them too greedy to oppose us.
But, sir, our nobles will be reluctant to uproot. New lands mean new taxes, and they're already taxed for the war in France.
King Edward Longshanks, the film's primary villain, needed to be monstrously cruel, casually evil, terrifying in his indifference to human suffering. Patrick McGoohan understood this and made a deliberate choice. He wouldn't rehearse his most vicious dialogue. He believed rehearsal would sand down the edges, make the cruelty feel performed rather than genuine. So, when cameras rolled on scenes where Longshanks orders atrocities, discusses strategy with brutal pragmatism, or dismisses human life, McGoohan was delivering those lines for the first time with full commitment. The other actors didn't know what was coming. When Longshanks casually orders his son's lover thrown from a window, when he discusses Scotland as a breeding problem to be solved through rape, McGoohan's delivery shocked his scene partners. Their reactions are genuine surprise and discomfort, which made the scenes more effective. Mel Gibson, initially frustrated by McGoohan's refusal to rehearse, eventually recognized the genius of the approach. Longshanks felt unpredictable and dangerous because McGoohan himself was unpredictable, keeping everyone off balance. The actor brought intelligence to the cruelty, playing Longshanks not as a cartoon villain, but as a ruthless pragmatist who'd calculated that mercy was weakness. McGoohan's background in theater gave him the technical skill to deliver unrehearsed dialogue perfectly, while his instincts as an actor told him when preparation would diminish impact. The result is one of cinema's great villains, a man whose evil feels thoughtful and deliberate rather than theatrical. Number 12. The Battle of Stirling Bridge had no bridge. The historical Battle of Stirling Bridge, William Wallace's greatest military victory, was won because of brilliant tactical use of a narrow bridge. Wallace let English forces partially cross, then attacked when they were divided and vulnerable, using geography as a weapon. It's one of military history's clever tactical victories. Braveheart's version of the battle has no bridge whatsoever. It's fought on an open field, a massive clash of armies with no tactical complexity, just raw courage and violence. Mel Gibson and the writers removed the bridge entirely, believing it would be visually confusing and slow down the action. They wanted a sprawling battle that looked epic on screen, and a bottleneck bridge didn't serve that vision. Historians were baffled and frustrated. The bridge wasn't a minor detail. It was the entire point, the reason Wallace won against superior numbers. Removing it turned tactical genius into simple bravery. But Gibson defended the choice, arguing that cinema requires simplification. Explaining medieval bridge tactics would require exposition that would kill momentum. Better to create a visceral, exciting battle that audiences could follow instinctively. The decision prioritized spectacle over accuracy, emotional impact over historical detail. Modern viewers learning the real history are often shocked to discover the battle's defining feature was completely omitted. It's perhaps Braveheart's most significant historical change, transforming a tactical victory into a triumph of will, rewriting not just details, but the fundamental nature of Wallace's greatest achievement. Number 11. James Horner composed the score in just 3 weeks. Braveheart's sweeping, emotional score is integral to its impact. The music swells during battles, aches during romantic scenes, and mourns during tragedy. It's one of James Horner's most celebrated compositions, earning him an Academy Award nomination. But he composed the entire score in approximately 3 weeks, an almost impossibly tight deadline for a 3-hour epic film. The rush schedule happened because of post-production delays. Mel Gibson kept adjusting the edit, fine-tuning performances and pacing. By the time he locked the final cut, the release date was immovable, and Horner had minimal time to compose. Most film scores of this scale take months. Horner had weeks. He worked around the clock, composing, recording, and conducting with barely any sleep. He used techniques he'd developed on previous films, incorporating Scottish and Irish traditional music elements, using Willian pipes and fiddles to create authentic Celtic flavor. Some themes were composed directly to picture, Horner watching scenes and writing music that matched emotional beats precisely. The orchestra recorded sections before the full score was complete, with Horner writing additional material between recording sessions. The breakneck pace meant some cues weren't as developed as Horner would have liked, but the time pressure also created instinctive, emotional composition. He didn't have time to overthink, so he followed his gut, creating music that felt rather than calculated. The result resonates powerfully, proving that sometimes constraints force artists to access their purest creative instincts. Number 10. The Scots Actually Wore. Kilts 700 Years. Too early.
Lee, our cavalry will ride them down like grass. Send the horse. Full attack.
Throughout Braveheart, Scottish warriors wear kilts as their primary garment, creating an instantly recognizable visual identity. Those flowing plaids became synonymous with Scottish pride and the film's aesthetic. But kilts weren't invented until the 16th century, approximately 300 years after William Wallace's time. In the 13th century, Scots wore tunics, trousers, and cloaks similar to other medieval Europeans. The Great Kilt, or Félea de Mór, didn't appear until the 1500s, and the modern tailored kilt came even later in the 18th century. Costume designer Charles Knode knew this historical fact, but deliberately chose kilts anyway. He wanted an immediate visual shorthand that screamed Scottish to international audiences. Kilts achieved that instantly, requiring no explanation or exposition. They also provided practical filming advantages, allowing greater movement during fight choreography, and looking more dramatic when warriors ran or fought. The decision infuriated Scottish historians and medieval scholars who saw it as perpetuating ignorant stereotypes. But it delighted Scottish audiences who embraced the film despite its inaccuracies, claiming it captured spiritual truth even when factual details were wrong. The anachronistic kilts became one of Braveheart's most criticized but also most beloved elements. They're historically indefensible but cinematically perfect, another example of Mel Gibson choosing emotional impact over documentary accuracy. The image of kilted warriors charging into battle became iconic, appearing on posters, in popular culture, and in the imagines of millions who now associate medieval Scotland with garments that didn't exist yet. Number 9. Brendan Gleeson's character was based on multiple historical figures.
You've dropped your rock.
Taste of manhood.
What about the others? Nest of scheming bastards. You couldn't agree on the colour of shite. It's a trap. Are you blind?
Look at this. We've got to try. We can't do this alone.
Hamish Campbell, William Wallace's loyal friend and fellow warrior, is a central character who appears throughout the film. Brendan Gleeson played him with warmth and strength, creating one of the story's most beloved supporting roles. But Hamish Campbell didn't exist. He's a composite character, created by combining elements from multiple historical figures associated with Wallace. The real Wallace had companions and fellow resistance leaders, but their names, relationships, and roles were dramatically different from the film's portrayal. Screenwriter Randall Wallace created Hamish because the story needed a constant companion for William. Someone who could be present throughout the narrative, providing friendship, comic relief, and emotional grounding. Using actual historical figures would have required following their real trajectories, which didn't serve the screenplay's structure. So, Hamish became an invention, a fictional Scotsman who could be whatever the story needed. Gleeson brought such authenticity to the role that many viewers assumed Hamish was real, a documented historical figure. The actor researched Scottish culture extensively, developed a convincing accent, and embodied the character so completely that fiction felt like fact. This blending of real history with invented characters is common in historical epics, but Braveheart does it so seamlessly that distinguishing truth from fabrication becomes nearly impossible for general audiences. Hamish represents the common Scottish warrior, the everyday fighter who joined Wallace's rebellion. He's not one person, but an amalgamation of thousands, given face and voice through Gleason's powerful performance. Number 8. The torture and execution scene was toned down from reality. William Wallace's actual execution was far more brutal than what Braveheart shows. The historical record describes being hanged until nearly dead, then cut down while still conscious. He was castrated, disemboweled while alive, his intestines burned before him. Only then was he beheaded and his body quartered, the pieces sent to different parts of Britain as warning. Medieval execution was designed to maximize suffering and humiliation, to break the condemned spiritually before death. Mel Gibson knew the full historical details, but made a conscious decision to show only a fraction of that horror. The film's execution scene is brutal enough to earn its R rating, showing Wallace stretched on the rack, tortured, and finally beheaded. But it omits the most graphic elements, the castration and disembowelment that define the punishment. Gibson later explained he wanted the scene to be horrible, but not unwatchable. If he'd shown the complete historical reality, audiences would have been so traumatized they'd miss the scene's emotional meaning. The execution needed to be about Wallace's defiance and spiritual victory, not just gore. Test screenings confirmed this instinct. The version Gibson filmed was already almost too much for some viewers. A more graphic depiction would have been gratuitous rather than meaningful. Critics and historians who knew the real details sometimes complained that Braveheart sanitized history. But Gibson argued that cinema requires calibration, finding the balance between authenticity and audience tolerance, serving emotional truth rather than documentary recreation. Number 7. Catherine McCormick was cast. Days before her scenes were filmed,
Always have. I want to marry you. Is that a yes?
Aye, that's a yes.
Now.
Murren, William Wallace's first wife, whose murder triggers his rebellion, is crucial to the story's emotional foundation. English actress Catherine McCormick played her with such warmth and vulnerability that audiences immediately understood what Wallace lost, what fueled his rage. But McCormick was cast only days before filming her scenes, a last-minute replacement for another actress who dropped out due to creative differences with Mel Gibson. McCormick had minimal time to prepare, no opportunity for extensive rehearsal or character development work. She arrived on set in Scotland, met Gibson, and immediately began filming intimate emotional scenes. The wedding sequence, the romantic moments, and Murren's brutal death scene were all filmed within her first week. She later described it as terrifying, being thrown into a major film with one of Hollywood's biggest stars, expected to create chemistry and emotional depth with almost no preparation. But that rawness worked for the character. Murren's innocence and vulnerability came partly from McCormick's genuine nervousness, her newness to the production translating to the character's youth and naivety. The chemistry between her and Gibson developed quickly, both actors professional enough to create believable intimacy despite barely knowing each other. McCormick's performance grounded the entire film, making Wallace's motivation clear and emotionally resonant. When Murren dies, the audience feels genuine loss because McCormick made her real in just a handful of scenes, proving that sometimes instinct and natural talent matter more than extensive preparation. Number 6. The film sparked a genuine surge in Scottish nationalism. Braveheart's release in 1995 coincided with renewed debate about Scottish independence from the United Kingdom. The film didn't cause the political movement. but it became its cultural touchstone, providing imagery, emotion, and rhetoric that independent supporters embraced enthusiastically. Scottish National Party membership increased significantly following the film's release. Surveys showed many young Scots cited Braveheart as influential in their political awakening, even while acknowledging its historical inaccuracies. The film made Scottish identity feel powerful and defiant rather than quaint or antiquated. Political rallies began incorporating Braveheart imagery, quotes, and themes. The "Freedom" cry became a protest chant. Organizers showed clips at gatherings to energize crowds. Some politicians worried the film was oversimplifying complex constitutional issues, turning serious political debate into emotional theater. But others recognized its power, using Braveheart references in speeches and campaigns. When Scotland held its independence referendum in 2014, many observers noted Braveheart's lingering cultural influence, how a historical epic had shaped contemporary political consciousness. The film gave Scots a narrative of resistance and self-determination that transcended its inaccuracies. Whether independence was wise policy became secondary to the emotional appeal of national sovereignty. Mel Gibson never intended Braveheart as political propaganda. He was making an adventure film about freedom and courage. But art doesn't control its own meaning or impact. The film took on a life beyond cinema, becoming part of Scotland's ongoing conversation about identity and independence, proving that sometimes fiction shapes reality more than facts do. Number 5. Mel Gibson fought with his own stunt coordinator over safety. The battle scenes in Braveheart were designed to look brutal, chaotic, and dangerously real. Stunt coordinator Simon Crane wanted to achieve that realism while maintaining strict safety protocols, using controlled choreography and protective equipment. Mel Gibson wanted to push further, believing audiences could sense when action was too safe, too controlled. The conflict escalated throughout production. Crane would design a stunt with specific safety measures, padding, rehearsed timing, protective gear hidden under costumes. Gibson would arrive and demand they remove safety elements, make it faster, more unpredictable, more genuinely dangerous. He wanted stunt performers and extras to actually collide with force, wanted horses running at full speed through crowds, wanted weapons swinging closer to bodies than safety standards allowed. Crane threatened to quit multiple times, arguing that Gibson was risking serious injuries or worse. The insurance company got involved, setting hard limits on what could be attempted. Gibson pushed against every restriction, occasionally filming dangerous moments without informing safety supervisors, capturing footage he knew wouldn't be approved if proper channels were followed. Several injuries resulted from this approach. Broken bones, concussions, one stunt performer trampled by a horse and hospitalized for 3 days. Each incident intensified the conflict between artistic vision and responsible production practices. Gibson believed great cinema required genuine risk. That safety obsession created sanitized action that insulted audiences. Crane believed no shot was worth permanent injury or death. The tension never fully resolved, with both men compromising grudgingly throughout filming, creating spectacular battles while somehow avoiding catastrophic tragedy. Number 4. The film was nearly rated. NC-17 for violence. When Braveheart was submitted to the MPAA ratings board, it initially received an NC-17 rating. The commercial kiss of death that would have prevented most theaters from showing it and eliminated the young adult audience. The board cited excessive violence, particularly in battle scenes and the execution sequence, as beyond acceptable R-rated content. Mel Gibson was stunned. He'd made conscious choices to show medieval warfare realistically, but hadn't expected the nuclear option of an NC-17. Paramount panicked, knowing an NC-17 rating would destroy the film's commercial prospects and Oscar chances. Gibson had to make cuts, trimming seconds of gore from battle scenes, reducing the explicit nature of certain deaths, and most significantly, shortening the torture sequence. He fought every frame, arguing that sanitizing medieval warfare was dishonest, that audiences deserved to understand the brutality Wallace faced. The ratings board wouldn't budge on certain moments. A sequence showing intestines being pulled from a living victim was deemed absolutely unacceptable. Close-ups of sword wounds had to be reduced. The amount of blood visible in certain shots had to be decreased digitally. Gibson made minimum necessary changes with maximum resentment, believing the MPAA was censoring historical reality. He submitted a revised cut that barely satisfied the board, receiving an R rating with warnings about intense graphic violence. But he kept meticulous records of every cut, later releasing a director's version on home video that restored much of the removed footage, giving audiences the option to see his full violent vision. Number 3. Randall Wallace. Discovered the story through accidental tourism. The entire film exists because screenwriter Randall Wallace, no relation to William Wallace, took a wrong turn while vacationing in Scotland in the 1980s. He'd been touring Edinburgh and accidentally wandered into a monument dedicated to William Wallace. Knowing nothing about Scottish history, he read the plaques describing Wallace's rebellion and execution. He was immediately captivated, shocked he'd never heard this story, despite its dramatic power. Wallace spent the rest of his vacation researching, visiting libraries, talking to historians, and becoming obsessed with William Wallace's life. He recognized immediately that this was film material, an epic story of freedom, rebellion, and sacrifice that could rival any historical epic. Back in America, he began writing the screenplay, spending years developing the story while working other jobs. He sent the script to every producer and studio in Hollywood, receiving rejection after rejection. Executives said medieval epics were dead, that audiences wouldn't care about Scottish history, that the budget would be prohibitive. Wallace refused to give up, continuing to refine the script and search for someone who shared his vision. Finally, the script reached Mel Gibson through a mutual connection. Gibson read it in one sitting and immediately called Wallace, saying he wanted to not just star, but direct. That accidental discovery in Edinburgh led to one of the 90s most successful films, multiple Academy Awards, and renewed global interest in Scottish history. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest stories are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to stumble upon them and passionate enough to share them with the world. Number 2. Sophie Marceau didn't speak English well and learned lines. Phonetically, Princess Isabella's scenes required sophisticated dialogue, political maneuvering, and romantic intimacy, all delivered in English. But Sophie Marceau, a French actress with limited English fluency, struggled with the language throughout production. She could handle basic conversation, but the period dialogue, with its formal construction and archaic phrasing, was beyond her comfortable ability. Rather than recast or simplify the dialogue, Mel Gibson and Marceau developed a workaround. She would learn her lines phonetically, memorizing the sounds without fully understanding the meanings. Dialect coaches worked with her for hours daily, drilling pronunciation and rhythm. She'd repeat lines until they sounded natural, even when she didn't comprehend every word. The approach created unexpected challenges. Marceau couldn't improvise or adjust dialogue on the fly because she didn't understand the language well enough. Every line had to be precisely as written and rehearsed. If Gibson wanted to change even a small phrase during shooting, Marceau needed time to learn the new sounds. But the method also created interesting results. Marceau's delivery had a formal, careful quality that actually suited Princess Isabella's character. She sounded deliberate and thoughtful because she genuinely was concentrating on each word. The slight foreignness in her cadence worked for a French princess speaking English. By the end of production, Marceau's English had improved significantly through immersion. But during filming, much of her beautiful, nuanced performance came from an actress delivering sounds she'd memorized rather than language she fully understood, creating emotion through commitment and instinct rather than intellectual comprehension. Number 1. The film's success saved Mel Gibson's directing career. Before Braveheart, Mel Gibson had directed one film, The Man Without a Face, in 1993, which was a modest success but didn't establish him as a major directorial talent. When he announced he'd direct and star in a 3-hour medieval epic about Scottish independence, Hollywood was skeptical. Industry insiders predicted disaster, a vanity project that would end Gibson's directing ambitions and possibly damage his acting career. The budget ballooned to $70 million, enormous for the time, especially for a historical drama with no guaranteed audience. Paramount grew increasingly nervous as filming dragged on and costs mounted. Test screenings provided the first glimmer of hope. Audiences loved the film, responding emotionally to the story, the battles, and Gibson's performance. But executives remained cautious until the film opened Memorial Day weekend 1995 and became an immediate hit. It grossed over $210 million worldwide, became a cultural phenomenon, and swept the Academy Awards, winning 5 Oscars including Best Picture and Best Director. That success transformed Gibson from actor dabbling in directing into a serious filmmaker with proven ability to handle epic-scale productions. It gave him the credibility and clout to direct future projects on his own terms, leading eventually to The Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto. Without Braveheart's success, Gibson's directing career likely would have ended before it truly began. The film's triumph validated his vision, proved his instincts correct, and established him as someone who could be trusted with massive budgets and creative control, changing the trajectory of his entire career. Braveheart didn't tell history, it rewrote it, turning facts into legend and creating a myth more powerful than truth. The secrets revealed the courage behind the camera, matched what happened in front of it. If this journey inspired you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us which secret surprised you most. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the greatest freedom is the freedom to tell the story your way.